It was a large creature, as tall as a tree, a heart of ice, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones, was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets like a black void. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Its body was unclean and suffering from suppurations of the flesh, giving off a strange and eerie odor of decay, decomposition, death, and corruption. In Minnesota's North Woods, the forests of the Great Lake area, and the central regions of Canada are said to live a malevolent being called a Wendigo. This creature has long been known among the Algonquin Ojibwe, Eastern Cree, and Innu peoples. They have described them as giants, many times larger than human beings. Although descriptions can vary somewhat, common to all these cultures is the view that the Wendigo is a malevolent, cannibalistic, supernatural being strongly associated with the winter, the north, coldness, famine, starvation, and cannibalism. Wendigos are said to be cursed to wander the lands, eternally seeking to fulfill their voracious appetites for human flesh. As the tale goes, the first ever Wendigo was once a lost hunter. During a brutally cold winter storm, the man's intense hunger drove him to cannibalism. According to the legends, a Wendigo is created whenever a human resorts to cannibalism to survive. Other versions of the legend cite that a Wendigo might also possess humans who displayed extreme greed, gluttony, and excess. A shaman may be the only person who can subdue and destroy a Wendigo, using either a silver, steel, or iron bullet or dagger. Some legends, however, claim the Wendigo's heart must be cut out and melted or burned in a fire before its spirit is truly vanquished. Now that's pretty terrifying, don't you think? I mean, imagine one night you wake up in your log cabin in the middle of a Canadian forest and you hear a tapping. You hear a knocking, you hear a kicking, and you got this creepy, gangly, 15-foot tall, emaciated creature licking its dirty, disgusting lips, telling you it wants to eat your flesh, telling you it wants to devour your heart and drink your blood because it is a Wendigo and it is hungry. But nonetheless, I'm going to break down a couple of cases of Wendigo in action. But before I do so, I'm actually going to give you the scientific explanation behind the Wendigo so as to not have you crapping your pants at night. So in psychology, there is something called a Wendigo psychosis, and this was typically found in the regions of northern Minnesota, the boreal forests of Canada, and the forests of the Great Lake region where the Wendigo is typically cited. Now, what Wendigo psychosis is almost a combination of depression, anxiety, starvation, dissociation, and it typically happens during the winter when the food rations were low, when people were isolated, when people were depressed, and something goes on in their head. The combination of starvation, being isolated, something goes on where these people think that eating human flesh is the right course. It's not merely for survival. It becomes them. They go on these rampages where they go out almost like a serial killer, slaughtering individuals, pouncing on women, tearing apart children, killing their brethren, and just devouring their flesh. It doesn't matter how much they eat. Their appetite is insatiable. And these sightings must have inspired the myth of the Wendigo, and the causation of them must be the moral of the myth, which is to value community, which is to stay tight-knit, stay close, because obviously the people who were isolated and who could not reach food would end up going Wendigo, essentially. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. Story number 1. This is a document from an individual who found out his 2 comrades were inflicted with the Wendigo disease. What caused us great concern was the intelligence that met us upon entering the lake. namely that the men deputed by our conductor to summon the nations to the North Sea and assigning them a rendezvous where they were to await our coming, had met their death the previous winter, in a very, very strange manner. Those poor men, according to the report given us, were seized with an ailment unknown to us, but not very unusual among the people we were seeking. They are afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all these species of disease. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves, and devour them voraciously without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey, and the more greedily they eat, the more that they hunger. This ailment attacked our deputies, and as death is the sole remedy among those simple people for checking such acts of murder, they were slain in order to stay the course of their madness. Story number 2, probably the most infamous case of Wendigo psychosis. Swift Runner was a trader with the Hudson's Bay Company. He was married and the father of 6 children. During the winter of 1878 and 1879, Swift Runner and his family were starving. His eldest son was the first to die, and at some point Swift Runner succumbed to the Wendigo. Though emergency food supplies were available at Hudson's Bay Company post some 25 miles away, he did not attempt to travel there. Instead, he killed the remaining members of his family and consumed them. He eventually confessed and was executed by authorities. Alrighty, so what do we make of this? Whether or not we actually believe there are Wendigo out there or not is besides the point. The legend of the Wendigo has long been associated with real-life problems like insatiable greed, selfishness, and violence. Basically, the word Wendigo can also function as a symbol for gluttony in the image of excess. As Basil Johnson has written, the idea of turning Wendigo is a very real possibility when the word refers to self-destruction rather than literally becoming a monster in the forest. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do subscribe, and until next time.